Good afternoon, everyone. Shane McPhail here with RSI. Today we are going to be doing the release presentation for release 8.21 that is going out tomorrow. So we'll get started with City Ledger. So currently, if you go into Operations and you go to Message Center, the Message Center allows you to do log entries, tasks, and messages. Currently, tasks, you can set recurring tasks on the go. You can attach tasks to reservations. So the new thing for this release is you're actually going to be able to attach a task to an invoice. So you'll notice in my list here, I have res ID / invoice ID. So currently it just has res ID, but now we do both. So if it's on a reservation like this one, it is R1976, and if it's on an invoice, it's I1026. So it's very similar to the way that we do it for a reservation. If I click on new entry, so I'm going to go over this a little bit quicker. So if you haven't used the Message Center for tasks, I encourage you to review the full Message Center document in our support docs and then look at the invoice area. So essentially when I go to new entry, I'm going to create as a task. You choose the date that you're going to do the task for. And here, so before it used to be just reservation. In this case, I now have invoice, where we search for the invoice ID, or I click on reservation, search for the res ID. Now for res ID, we had arrival date and departure date. When we do invoice, we're actually going to show the account that the invoice is attached to and the invoice date that was created. So here, if you click on search invoice, put in the number of the invoice that you're attaching it to, then it will come up here, and then you would go on from there. So I'm going to discard this. I'm not going to do it from this area. The other area you can do it, if you go into Operations, City Ledger, I'm going to go to Citrix here. We're going to view details on the account, go to my invoices, and let's go to the Barry McPhail invoice. We'll open up that invoice. As you see, we now have a task tab on the invoice. So this would be, if the guy said that the check was in the mail for this, I may put a task, please check the mail by X date to see if it has arrived. Please follow up with the contact on payment. So any tasks that you want to set for future dates. So here I'm going to click on New Task. And you'll notice that automatically has the Create as a Task clicked off, the invoice is ticked off, and the invoice number is all put in here for you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this for the 9th. Actually, that's a Saturday, so be more realistic with a Monday. I'm going to assign it to my tasks. And then here, depending on how you guys have things set up, so for my property called Hotel, I actually have an accounting department. So I don't know if Roger, Aaron, Monica, or myself is working on that money or will be looking at the accounts. So I'm going to assign it to everyone, excuse me, in accounting. And I'll just say follow up on payment. Sarah said check would be on its way. Follow up. Okay, I'm going to click send, so this will put the task in my task and also send it to the other people. So now if I can see the task is attached here, I'm going to close out of here, and we're going to go back into the Message Center. If I go to my task, indeed here I can see this one, follow up on payment. It's due on April 11th for invoice 1035. Okay, if I double click on that, I can go in and I can see the task. And say, I received the check earlier, you can even go in and set this as complete earlier. But again, I'm not going to review the whole message center and how to work that. If you haven't used this before, I certainly encourage you to look at the entire document on how to use the message center. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so that's the first thing, attaching tasks to City Ledger invoices. Next one is in our search capability. So if I go into search, I go to advanced search. Most commonly, we're searching by last name, I find, or by res ID, but we have added now an email search. So if I put bruce@notbatman.com and click search, that will bring me up to Bruce Wayne's reservation. And just so you know, you don't have to put the whole email address. If I had have just searched with the first few characters of the email address, that's going to work as well. There we go. So Bruce Wayne. Okay, we've also added this. When I go to new reservation, and if you're using the force search, so the force search forces the person to look for a profile. Currently, we have first name, last name, loyalty number, and again here we've added the email search. So if you're using the regular search, not using the force search for past guest profiles, again, you'll be able to search by email when trying to pull up the past guest profile. Okay, and over in our operations guest profile area, under the guest search here, again, we've added email to here. And we've also added, if you have the merge profiles feature, when you're searching for profiles, we've put in the search for email for the master profile. Hang on a sec here. And here, when you're adding, you can search by email again. Okay, so that is the searching by email feature added. Next is restriction. So we put in a brand new restriction. And I'm going to start by going into clerks. This is a clerk permission. We're going to go to Heather Gooding here. I'm going to go to permissions. And on the right-hand side, under reservation management, you'll see here we have a disallow cash reversals and adjustments. So this is specifically applying to cash reversals and adjustments. So I'm going to give permission 2122. So this is one of those reverse permissions in that you're giving it to the person so that they can't do something. So that's why we call it a reverse permission. So I'm going to give this to Heather Gooding. And I'm going to have to go change her password because I have no idea what it is. There we go. Okay, so the first phase is that we're giving that reverse permission to Heather. Now, which transaction codes does this apply to? If I go into System Configuration, Transaction Codes, I'm going to go into my payment area. Now, under Payments, if I click on Add, there's a transaction subgroup called Cash. So I was going to make it that this permission would automatically apply to the cash trend subgroup. The problem is there are some hotels out there that have cash, but they also have things like express checkout that has cash. They may have a wire transfer that is set up as cash. So for wire transfer or express checkout or for bad debt, these are all listed as trend subgroup cash, but we don't care if someone does adjustments or reversals or negative postings on those, or maybe we do and we could apply it. But the main reason that we built this feature is when we're dealing with cash. So when the clerk has cash in hand, we may want to restrict the ability to do reversals or adjustments or anything to do with cash. So I've actually created this one called blocked cash. And what you'll see here is I have a check mark, apply permission 2122, disallow cash reversals or adjustments. So what it does is it's kind of a two-step process. It looks to see, okay, does the clerk have permission 2122? Yes. And is this check mark on that cash trend subgroup check? Yes. Then in this case, it would restrict that payment, or the, the reversing or the adjusting. So let's see it in action here. Okay, so now that we're logged in under Heather Gooding, and I realize I have no one in-house, so bear with me for a moment. Okay, so here we have Barry McPhail in-house. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post a payment, and I'm going to post it under block cash for $97.95. Okay, so now let's say I want to do an adjustment on this block cash. If I right-click and I go and I see, bear with me for a moment. It appears as though someone has given Heather Gooding 1537, disallow reversals, adjustments, and moves. So this is overall reversals, adjustments, and moves. You're going to go back to the meeting screen just for a moment. And I will share room key with you momentarily. And there we go. So you should be back on seeing room key again. And we're going to log back in under Gooding. Okay, we'll go back to the folio. We'll go back to that block cash payment. I'm going to right click. So here I have reverse and adjustment. So the feature still shows up. If I try to do a reversal, because I have that reverse permission that stops me from adjusting this type of payment, I would need either a manager or another clerk that doesn't have permission 2122 to come over and put in their credentials. Okay? And same thing with adjustment. Same thing if I go to post payment and I go to block cash and if I try to do a negative payment, so we're refunding the money back, again, we would need a manager override here. Okay, so that only applies to cash. The properties that may use are when the agents are specifically dealing with the cash money in hand. Okay, next we're going back to City Ledger. So if I go back to Operations City Ledger, under Reports, you'll notice we have two new options here. One is Print Account Notes, and the other one is Print Notes on Outstanding Invoices. So for account notes, so what I might do is at the end of the month, as we're doing month end, I'm going to go to Print Account Notes, and here we have a note. The date ranges for when the note was entered. So I may look at, well, in the month of March, were there any notes added? March 1 to March 31st. Was there any notes added to any accounts? And here indeed, let me make this a little bit bigger here. Indeed, we can see the note on Astra here. So Henry is sending a check for 30 outstanding invoices for February, and then another one for JTB. Frank Myers will be taking over for Marie in accounting as of April 5th, 2016. And then the other one we have is print notes on outstanding invoices. So again, let's pretend it was month end for March. So I'm going to run from March 1st to March 31st. And I can see any notes that were entered in on any of the invoices. Right, so I showed you a little while back that you can do tasks on City Ledger invoices as well. So you can kind of use the notes and the task together. So in this case, I have this note saying check 15496 should be here on Friday, April 1st. So maybe I should have set a task for myself on April 1st, see if check 15496 was sent to the hotel, right? So we want to use those in tandem the best to our advantage here. And then here we have other notes sent to collections. Visa was declined for the third time. Spoke with George today. Check. So whatever notes you want to put on there. Okay, so again, that's under Reports, Print Account Notes, and Print Notes, notes on outstanding invoices. I'll just go in here for a second. If I go into the account, if you don't know where the notes are, here's the notes fields here. So you can add any notes, and what we'll do, it'll do a time date stamp and who's entering it in. Okay, so that's for the account note. And if I go to the invoice itself, there's the notes right beside the task tab. New, enter the note. And there we go. Okay, so that is printing account notes and invoice notes. Okay, next is moving into reports. So we have a brand new report. I talked about this in our last release that this would be coming. So if you look at our reservations now, as you know, we put in the two new restriction. Sorry, I'm just going to change the size of my screen here for a second. We have the two new restriction reports. So if your agents are using the rate restriction override, you can look at by booking date. So any reservations that were made that day, and if the restriction override was used, and by arrival date. So the arrival date, we're looking at the date that the reservation was for. So really the by booking date is for you to audit and see what your clerks are doing. What are they overriding? By arrival date, you're trying to see the effect that that restriction overriding or number of restriction overriding was done for particular days to see its effect. So same thing with abandonment. We currently have the abandonment reasons, so that's the regrets and denials by booking date. So that, again, is the date that the booking was made. So the new report that we added for this release is by arrival date. So again, we're trying to see the effect that their regrets and denials would be used. So here I can see that on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we actually denied 5 reservations because we were sold out that day. Okay, and what we want to start to look at is, you know, were we taking other reservations at lower rates? Were we giving discounted rates? Were we using the restricted override? So were we, say we had a 3-night minimum for those dates and someone went in and used the restriction override 5 different times and allowed a 1-night minimum length of stay or a 1-night reservation through 5 times? Well, maybe we should have waited to the people that wanted to stay for 3 nights. So it just kind of lets you look at the reports in tandem to see, is there any opportunities that we're missing when we're comparing these reports? Okay, also gives us an opportunity to look at rates. If we see that the hotel's sold out and we had another 10 calls, 20 calls after we sold out, it gives us an idea of higher demand days and when we can look at maximizing our rate on those days. Okay, so essentially what you're getting here is the month and then the date is across the top. You'll have the days of the week, the total that were done that day, totals and grand totals, and then we give a grand total again at the bottom for all regrets and denials. Okay, if you haven't used regrets and denials before, the force regrets and denials is actually a permission that needs to be turned on by our support department. Okay, so what it does is if I click on new reservation and I choose the date that the guest wants to come, and then for whatever reason, either we're sold out, we don't have the room available for that time, the rate was too high, whatever the reason may be, when we cancel this or we're not seeing this reservation through to the end, that's when we get the reservation abandonment come up, where we can choose our reason. And then our reasons can be set up by the property as well. It's not a set list. So under our reasons, there's the regrets and denials. And again, we have a whole document on regrets and denials if that's something you're interested in looking into. If it is something you think you want to implement for your property that's not turned on, reach out to our support department either by email or by phone, and they can turn on that feature for you. Okay? But for properties already using forced regrets and denials, that report will be there, just to be clear. Okay, next is the group revenue by sales manager. So a few releases ago, if I go into reports, statistics, we have the wholesale statistics and we have the corporate statistics. And on both of those reports, we put in a way that you can filter by sales manager. Now the sales manager, if I go into system configuration, clerks, and if I modify Sharam here, I've made Sharam a sales manager. And then here, Gary Butler is not one, so if I click modify and click on is sales manager and click post, I've now made that clerk a sales manager. So now if I go into operations, wholesale, or corporate, again, we released that a few releases ago. You can attach the sales manager to either one of those. And now in groups, you can do it. So if I go into operations groups, I'm going to click on new. And if I go to the contact and billing page, here we have the sales manager drop down. And anyone that we checked off as a sales manager will now show up in this dropdown, and I can attach them to that group. So where we put the filter is actually still within the groups area. If I go to reports, I go to group revenue summary. The summary total is the way the report was in the past. Okay, so that's unchanged. But now we can go and if I look at the past month, let's say, we can run a sales manager commission sheet. Basically what that does is it groups them together. So here, the first three groups, it was actually only supposed to be one, but someone else has been making groups. So here we see three groups that don't have a sales manager attached. Okay, but here Sally had Warehouser. Okay, Charam had Talk World Discovery. You can see the total produced by that sales manager. Or you can specifically go to a sales manager and say, I just want to see for Sally what she did during that range. So here we see sales manager, Sally W. Okay, I lied actually. We did make one change to the summary total. We did add the sales manager column here as well for those that may want to put into a CSV and do their own data mining. Okay, but otherwise the reports is the same. Okay, so that is sales manager filtering in groups. So now we have sales manager filtering in all three areas, in corporate, wholesale, and in group. Okay, next is our BI. So in BI, I'm going to share another screen here with you. There we go. Okay, so on our business insights, we have the daily operations, reservation productivity report. Oh, I've been logged out for too long. Bear with me here. Okay, so the reservation productivity report. It'll take just a moment for that to load. Okay, so currently you can only run this for one date at a time. Basically what it shows you is all the reservations that were created on that day by clerk. So we've made the change now. Unfortunately, I cannot run the report right now. I had to have a little tweak done to it. So I'm going to show you the notes that are going out tomorrow. There we go. Okay, so we've actually made three different changes to this report. First thing is it's now date rangeable, and you can choose up to 60 days, a maximum of 60 days for the report. Currently, same-day bookings or walk-ins do not show up on the reservation productivity report. This has now been added to the report. And then the third thing is the room type. So if you look here, in the currently the way it prints out, it will put the room type here as a grouping for all the reservations. The problem is when you export that to Excel, you now only have the room type once, and it doesn't show up next to each room. So we actually made it that it will put the room type on each line. It'll still group it, so it'll show all the DNSLs together, then show all the LNSLs together. So it still has the grouping, but we just made it that when you export it into Excel, it'll just be more usable because it has it beside each line. Okay, let's go back over to room key. And the last bit is just some tweaks and defects we're working on. Just, you know, we're not listing all the defects and all the tweaks that we've done, or sorry, all the bugs and everything that we've done over the past 8 weeks. There's hundreds of those. We kind of look at the ones that are going to affect everyone, that everyone should know about. A lot of our tickets are sometimes specific for properties, so we don't review those, of course. Okay, so the first thing we did, if you click on New Reservation, in our last release, we said that if you choose a corporate account, we have this use address from a corporate account, and it will fill in the address, pull it directly over from us, from the company. And we had it for group, and we had it for wholesale. Now, some hotels were saying they really don't like their agents to use this shortcut. They want to make sure that their agents are always getting the address no matter what, so they would prefer not to have this as a shortcut. So we actually did put in a permission, and it is a clerk permission. So if I go into System Configuration Clerks, and if I go to Reservation Management, it is 2130. So again, it's another reverse permission. You want to give this to the clerks that you don't want to be able to do this. So do not show corporate wholesale group autofill, address autofill, 2130. So you want to give that to the clerks that you don't want using that. Next, we had a few properties, and we probably only had a handful of tickets, but since it was from several properties, we want to mention it. In our maintenance module, some hotels found a way to put in a maintenance item without having a room number assigned to it. Now, we weren't exactly able to figure out how they were able to do that, but what we've done is we put a two-stage verification that you now will not be able to put in a maintenance item without a room number. Absolutely. So if you find yourself, if you print out your report and you have a maintenance item that is attached but it's not on a room number, please let us know so we can clear it off the report. So it's not going to automatically fix the ones from the past. If you still have it stuck on your report, we can remove that. That's no problem. And now we've made it that won't happen again from this point forward. So just contact support if you have one of those weird ones. Like I said, we saw a handful over a couple of hotels. If I go to Operations Property Dashboard, and here in the future reservations created, if I click on the drop-down, we're having an issue where the GDS reservations, so if you have a GDS interface with us through Expedia, Booking.com, Synexus, Windsurfer, TravelClick, those reservations were not showing up in the drop-down here. It would still show the number of bookings made, so we would see maybe 20 reservations and click on this blue drop-down and only see like 6 reservations because 14 were GDS reservations. They just weren't showing in this list. Okay, so that's been rectified, so they're now going to show. We had another one. We put a hot fix out a couple of weeks ago, and it had to do with payments. And what was happening is when people were posting payment, if they put in a reference here, so this is the mom's card, the message was being overridden by the type of payment that was being made. So what we've done is, I might not be able to post this. No. Sorry, I can't post this right now as I don't have the disable. But basically, it's going to keep both references. And again, we put that out, I think, 3 weeks ago or so. Rate Wizard. So if you go into System Configuration Property, if I go to Preferences, and I go to the Auto Log Off. So the Auto Log Off, if you have this turned on, it's basically 20 minutes. And what it is if after 20 minutes no one has used room key, it'll automatically log you out. It's kind of the idea if an agent walks away from the desk maybe for lunch or at the end of their shift and they stay logged in, after 20 minutes it's going to auto log them out. Now what was happening, we had a bug where if you were in System Configuration Rate Wizard, because Rate Wizard is a separate breakout window, room key wasn't realizing that you were still logged in or doing activity, I should say, within room key. So after 20 minutes, it would actually log them out as you're working in Rate Wizard. So we rectified that, but that will no longer happen when you're within Rate Wizard. We had an issue where if making a booking in using our corporate area, if you click on the drop-down here, you should only be seeing active accounts. But if people were to go into the little binoculars, which is the shortcut into corporate, then they would be able to see inactive accounts, which is fine, but then when you closed out of here and clicked on the drop-down, those inactive accounts would end up in this list. So we've made it that, yes, if you go into the corporate area, we're still going to show inactive, but it's obvious with the check mark. But here, it's not going to show in the drop-down. We had one that we could not produce again, and this was a few properties had this, so again, we're mentioning it since it happened to a few properties. With packages online, on eRes, our online booking engine, there was a way that people could make a booking with 0 adults. Again, we could not reproduce this. We couldn't find a way to make a reservation with 0 adults, but again, we did put in a second layer of validation on eRes. You cannot make a reservation for less than at least 1 adult in the room now. So again, it only happened to a few properties where that went through. The rate still showed up and the rate was still charging. It just came through as 0 adults, which made it odd. One we actually released probably about a week ago. If you go into rates, we have the cutoff days. So the cutoff day feature, often the cutoff is used for an advanced purchase, right? So we want someone to book this at least 40 days out from arrival. So let's say Mr. Smith booked his reservation at 45 days out. Well, yes, the rate was available. Then when we got inside 40 days, if we went to change the reservation, the rate was actually showing up here as no rate. So it wasn't holding it because technically, because we were within the 45 days, that's why it wasn't displaying. But we made a change that if you booked that rate before the cutoff and wanted to modify it afterwards, it would still hold that rate for you. Okay, and that was only for the using the cutoff feature. Okay, the last one, we had it reported again by a few hotels, so we're bringing it up here too. We had a weird thing where people were making bookings online on eRes for groups. So if you use this, if you use the eRes page, where you're allowing bookings to be booked through eRes, guests were actually able to go on, try to make a booking for the group with the wrong dates, and rooms were showing up as available. Now, if they tried to book the rooms, they would just get a spinning wheel, because at that point, room key would validate and say, well, no, the group lock is not for those dates. So we've made a change now that if they put in the wrong dates, nothing's going to show up, so there's no availability. So again, no one could actually make the booking. It just made it look like there's availability within the group block when there actually wasn't. Okay, and that's it for our tweaks and defects. We did send out an email a couple of weeks ago. We are actually going to be doing an update to our API endpoints. So we sent out an email to all our clients using the API endpoints. We're basically moving everything from staging into production. So if your property is using any of the staging, we're going to be putting those fields into production as of tomorrow. But again, we sent out a separate email about that about 2 weeks ago to everyone. Okay, and that's it for today's presentation. Tomorrow, we are going to try to get the release out by midday-ish, so by 12 or 1 has been our record the past few releases, so we'll stick with that. We'll send out full notes to everyone tomorrow on this. So today was kind of an overview. The notes are a little bit more in depth, and this webinar recording will be available as well. I do have a question here. It's actually just more a question about how to use room key. So is there a way to put a group of rooms out of order for the same reason? And at this point, we do not have the availability of doing maintenance on multiple rooms at one time. But great suggestion, and we've had this suggestion a couple of times before. I would certainly encourage you to put that on our feature board. So we have the AHA features. If you go to our website, and I'm going to put this in the release notes are going out tomorrow. So basically, it's a place where you can go. Here, let me show you, in case you haven't been before. Okay, so from our website, if I go to the support page, on the right-hand side here, we have product ideas for room key PMS. Please submit ideas, votes, and brainstorm. So the program that we use is called AHA. And this portal allows you to go in, you can log in, and here you can add your new idea. And what that does, it can open up discussion on here. We get votes. So what we start to look at is which are the ones getting the highest votes, you know, from a number of our customers. So here we have a mobile app, confirmations, right? So these are the ones that are getting higher notes. Here's another one, 21, right? And for those of you who may or may not know, we are currently working on our Room Key 2.0, which I'm not sure will be the name of the new Room Key. But as we're working on this, everything that you're putting in here is going to be considered for the new Room Key as well. So certainly encourage everyone to get in here. And the more votes we have, you know, we're listening to that. We're looking at what has the most votes and prioritizing based on that. So certainly encourage you to get in there and get those ideas in there. So at this point, if you have no questions, you can certainly dismiss yourself. If you do have any questions, I'm going to hang on the line just for a moment and see if there is any other questions. I can't see if anyone's typing or not, so I will stay on the line. And thanks everyone again for attending. I know your days are busy, so hopefully this helped.